Hi folks, it's Richard from Inclusive Driving. Just want to talk a little bit about how I mark mock tests. Now this video isn't going to talk about how we decide whether a fault is a driving fault, what we commonly call a minor fault, or serious or dangerous. It's just to talk you through how I actually record what happens on a mock test. So this is the form I use. It's very similar to how the iPad is laid out. Examiners will mark your real driving test on an iPad. They used to do it on paper forms, but moving with the times. So this is pretty much the same as what is on the iPad screen. Now, in the olden days, when it was done on paper, if you made a driving fault, so a minor fault as we commonly call it, the examiner would just put an oblique mark in the relevant section of the form. So let's say there was an accelerator problem. They'd just put a little diagonal line in the accelerator column. There was a separate box labelled S and D where they would mark a serious or a dangerous fault. Now, if we record things in that way, there's no chronology of what happened on the test. At the end of it, you just get a form with lots of marks on. Don't really know what order things happened in. So this is how I do it. We start a mock test. Let's say 2 minutes into the driving test, a minor fault occurs. Let's say appropriate speed. There we go, appropriate speed. What I would do is, instead of just putting a tick in that box or a line, I put the number 1. And that then at the end of the test lets me recall that that was the first fault that was committed. A few minutes later, perhaps we do another driving fault. Let's pick, positioning, normal driving. I would just put a number 2 in there. If a serious fault occurred, I would then put a number 3, but I draw a circle around it just to highlight that that was a serious fault and not a driving fault. But building up the numerical sequence is really valuable when we get to the end of a mock test and we park up and we give the good news or the bad news to the candidate. What we can then do is, with the learner, we can talk through the route. And because I've recorded what order the faults happened in, we can now have a conversation such as, okay, so you went, do you remember you did the right turn at the traffic lights? Well, just after that, do you remember going past some parked cars? Okay, well, you were a bit close there. And that's where your first fault occurred. So it lets us then give a visual description of the route in sequence. And I find that extremely useful. Learners find it useful as well, in my experience, to then be able to visualize that route together and go through in order of what happened when, what order it happened in. Okay, so that's how I do mock test marking. We'll probably do another video to discuss how we determine if something is a driving fault or a serious fault or a dangerous fault. If we were doing a mock test and I wanted to record a dangerous fault, what would I do? I would probably not record it. I would probably stop the test, and instead of continuing with the mock test, we'd actually probably address that dangerous fault with me being an instructor rather than me pretending to be an examiner. Well, that's all for now. Hope that's been useful, and we'll see you again very soon. Hi, it's me again. I hadn't quite finished. There was something I forgot to say, and that is mock tests tend to be a little bit negative because we're marking faults. So what I also do is sometimes just scribbling at the bottom, or sometimes putting smiley faces in relevant sections on the form. I like to highlight things that were done really well. So, for example, let's say we're going around a roundabout and the learner perhaps holds back from a van so that they stay out of that van's blind spot as they're going around a roundabout. That to me is something worth highlighting. So I'd find a relevant place on here, perhaps lane discipline or normal driving position. or I might just scribble it at the bottom, but we'd put a smiley face, and at the end of the test we'd say, okay, so that went really well. I like to try and keep the mock tests positive as well as negative. Okay, I'm really going now. Bye for now.